Okay then, we're going to do a brief review of plant diversity on the Seminole campus. So this would be a good opportunity if you ever wanted to wander around campus to look at different types of plants we have right here on campus, or if you needed to get some pictures for your biological collection, if you're doing a plant collection. You can see I'm going to try to orient you where we are so you can find your way around. Right now we're in between the UP building and the TL building. So we'll start out. Let's look right here to the right as we came out of the UP building. We have this beautiful string lily. Well, it's obviously a flowering plant. We know it's a flowering plant. Can we tell if it's a monocot or dicot? We know it's division magnoliophyta, a flowering plant. Well, there are two things we can look at in the field for sure. We can look at the leaf veins. The leaf veins all look to be running parallel. So that's an indication that it's a monocot. The other thing we could look at would be the flowers themselves. We can count the petals. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Threes or multiples of 3. That's another indication. This is a monocot flowering plant. Division magnoliophyta and class Monocotyledonnae, monocot. Here's another flowering plant right next door. This is a hibiscus. Just looking at the flowers, you can tell it is a dicot. Dicots have 4, 5, or multiples of 4 or 5 flower parts. Counting the petals there, I see 5. You could also look at the leaves. Unlike the monocots, which have parallel leaf veins, dicots have netted or branched leaf veins. Division magnoliophyta, class Dicotyledonnae, a dicot. Let's head on over kind of toward the entrance of the TL building, because there are a couple we can look at right over here. We've got a couple plants here that bear observation. You can see a whole bunch of these low-growing guys. These are kunti. Now kunti, at first glance, may look kind of fern-like, but we know it's not a fern because if we look down in there, you can see a little cone-like structure starting to form. This reproduces by cones. If it was a fern, it would be reproducing by spores. What reproduces by cones? Well, it could be a conifer or it could be a cycad. Kunti, in fact, is a native cycad, division Cycadophyta. We'll see another one, I think, in just a little bit that may have some bigger cones. Kunti, a cycad, division Cycadophyta. Now, right here next to it, we have a palm tree. Palm trees, real palm tree, like this one, which is our state tree. This is a sable or cabbage palm. They are flowering plants. You can see some of the old flower structures up there where it had flowers and then fruit. It's a flowering plant, so it's division magnoliophyta. Looking closely at the leaves, maybe you can tell parallel leaf veins. Parallel leaf veins indicate it is a monocot. Division magnoliophyta, class Monocotyledonnae, monocot. Real palm trees are flowering plants. Alright, to give you a feel for where we're heading from here, here's the TL building, the entrance to the TL. We're going to go down the side of the TL building. We're heading toward that area right over there at the end of the parking lot. Alright, let me orient you to where we are now. We've just come down the parking lot a bit. There's the UP building where we started. Here's the TL building, and right by the TL building, if you were heading out of campus in the parking lot here, there's a small little pond. We're going to wander around the pond a bit, but before we do that, right here at the junction of the parking lot next to the TL building, we see some interesting plants that we need to get. Now, we've already seen kunti, and you may recall that kunti is a cycad because it does produce cone-like structures for reproduction. That's kunti again. It's going to have either male cones or female cones. This one's a female. I don't know if you can see it looking back in there, but there's a big old female cone. There are a couple of other cycads here, right in this same spot. These are misnamed. They're called palms, but they're actually not palms at all. This one is called a cardboard palm. Unlike palms, which are flowering plants because they produce flowers and fruit, these guys don't produce flowers and fruit at all. They have cone-like structures for reproduction, just like the kunti. Cardboard palm is another cycad that's common in the area, as is the sago palm. We have two types of sago palms in the area. There's a king sago, like this one, and a queen sago. Both of them, even though they're called palms, are not palms, they're cycads. Now this guy isn't looking real good. In fact, I had to trim part of the top part off. He had some kind of heart rot going. But if you come looking for him, even if the big one's gone, there's some little ones coming up underneath. So you should be able to see some sago palms here. This is the king sago. Once again, division Cycadophyta. And right behind the cardboard palm and the sago palm, we have another plant you may recognize. This one is a whisk fern. Whisk ferns are in division Xylophyta. You can find them growing in the ground, as this one is, or a lot of times they'll grow in the boots of the palm trees. The boots being the broken off leaf stubs on palm trees. This is whisk fern. No real leaves to speak of at all. They just kind of look like green sticks. It looks like you could take a bunch of it and sweep with it, like a whisk broom. When they get ready to reproduce, they produce spherical structures that when it's time to release the spores, since these are spore-producing plants, they turn kind of an orangish yellow color. You can see some here that are green still. They're going to mature and they'll turn orangish yellow, and they will release spores everywhere. Whisk fern, another division Xylophyta. From here, we're going to wander over toward the pond area, and there's several different plants we can look at around this pond. Right here by the pond, the first thing we can look at is this tree. This is a pond cypress tree, a pond cypress. The pond cypress and the bald cypress trees are two common types of cypress we have in the area. Both of them are conifers, division Coniferophyta. The cypress trees, the pond cypress here and the bald cypress, they get little spherical cones that you can see growing here. These spherical cones kind of look like small green golf balls. That's the pond cypress, division Coniferophyta. There's another conifer just right along the margin over here. We have a little slash pine tree coming up. Pine trees, you know, get pine cones. That's not a surprise to you. And you know they're in division Coniferophyta. This is a small one. There are also some larger pine trees growing on campus right across the pond. You can see over there. There is a slash pine tree again, but this guy's bigger. Division Coniferophyta. And over here, we have a small southern red cedar, or some people call it eastern red cedar. This is another conifer, division Coniferophyta. This one's still relatively young. What they get are tiny little cones that I admit look very much like little berries. They're bluish gray in color, and they look like little berries when they get the cones on them. Southern or eastern red cedar, division Coniferophyta. Providing us this very welcome shade is this big laurel oak tree we see here. Laurel oaks, oak trees. What division, what type of plant would these guys be? The laurel oak, or the water oak, or the turkey oak, or the live oak. Well, you know they all produce acorns. And acorns then are a type of fruit. So you know it's a flowering plant. If it produces fruit, it came from a flower. Is this one then a monocot or a dicot, now that we know it's a flowering plant? Well, the easiest thing we can usually look at are the leaves, but you know what? The leaves are up there pretty far. If we can look at the veins in the leaves, we could tell. Even though the leaves that are still growing are way up there on the tree, old leaves fall off. So let's see if we can find an old leaf that fell off here, and we can tell if it is a monocot or a dicot. Here we go. Here's a leaf that fell off. Let's take a look at the veins. The leaf veins will tell us if they're all parallel. That means that it's a monocot. If they're netted or branched, we know it's a dicot. Looking at this, you can tell fairly easily then that the veins are not parallel. They are netted or branched leaf veins, which tells us it is a dicot. The oak trees are division Magnoliophyta, and then class Dicotyledonnae, a dicot. Continuing along the margin of the pond, we have a couple more divisions of plants. Over here, right along the shoreline, we see what looks to be almost a fuzzy green carpet. That is true moss, real moss. That is division Bryophyta. You remember that Spanish moss is misnamed. It's not really a moss. Spanish moss is a flowering plant, division Magnoliophyta. True moss, like this, is division Bryophyta. If you are doing a plant collection and you're using one of the true mosses you see in your collection, they can be tough to figure out exactly what species of moss you have. My suggestion would be, if you're doing that plant collection, do a search for Florida moss. And remember, not Spanish moss. And look at the images that appear for Florida moss. And do your best to match it up. Give me your best guess at what species of moss you have in your collection. Division Bryophyta, true moss. A couple others we can look at very quickly. Not a new division, but this guy here looks like we have some cattails coming up. Cattails are going to produce fruit. They're flowering plants, kind of grass-like. Now that we know that they are flowering plants, monocot or dicot? Looking at the leaf veins, they're all parallel. Definitely I'm going monocot. Monocot. Oop, I hear the frogs jumping in the pond. Wandering around this bayberry or wax myrtle tree right on the other side, and to orient you where we are, if you're following along by foot on campus, there's the back of the TL building. We're just on the other side of the pond now from that pond cypress that we saw. There's the pond cypress on the other side of the pond. On this side of the pond, we have another plant. This one is a horsetail. Horsetails are in division Sphenophyta. They look pretty much like miniature bamboo, but they're not bamboo. Bamboo is a grass-like plant, and grasses are flowering plants, Magnoliophyta. Horsetails are not grasses or grass-like. They are in division Sphenophyta. They do not produce flowers. They're going to produce spores. You can see the very distinct segmented appearance on the horsetail stems. Horsetails, division Sphenophyta. Right here in this short distance we've gone on campus, we've already identified a good number of divisions. Here's perhaps a better view of the laurel oak leaves. There's another laurel oak I found that had some branches hanging down. Now we can look at a growing leaf. As you look at these leaves, you can tell definitely the vein pattern in the leaves is netted or branched. That's how we knew it was a dicot. Before we wander further around the TL building, right here behind the TL building we do have some Spanish moss. Spanish moss is in division Magnoliophyta. It is not a moss. It's one of those that's misnamed. Spanish moss. There's another misnamed species called ball moss. Ball moss looks very much like Spanish moss, but it remains in a roundish spherical clump, hence the name ball moss. And just like Spanish moss, ball moss is not a moss, it's a flowering plant, division Magnoliophyta. Alright, where am I now? Well, I've wandered toward the other side of the TL building. And to orient you, that's the TL building there, and if I swing around you can see, alright, there's the pharmacy building, there's the big old lake that's near the entrance to campus. Anyway, we're looking at these guys. This is another type of palm we have in the area. This is a pygmy date palm. What kind of plants were palms? Real palms. Real palms, flowering plants. You can see they got some fruit on them. If there's fruit, came from a flower. Division Magnoliophyta. And as we already saw, when we looked at the cabbage palm or sable palm tree, looking up close at the leaves, you can see the veins all run parallel, so we know it's a monocot. Down here near the base of these pygmy date palms, we got some pretty little pentas growing. Pentas, if I'm just looking at the flowers now, monocot or dicot? I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals, which means it's a dicot. Of course, you could also look at the leaves. The veins in the leaves are netted or branched. You would know it is a dicot. Alright, to give you a feel for where I've wandered, I wandered up past the TL building now. There's the TL building. That direction's a UP building. I'm going to head out to the boardwalk. Hopefully it's open, we'll see. Regardless, I'm pretty sure we can see some ferns up here. So let's wander out toward the ponds, the lakes out this way. Well, looks like they have the boardwalk closed. So what I'll do is before I leave campus, I'm going to drive around over there by the library. And in the woods by the library, there are a good number of ferns. I'm sure I could make my way down here next to these ponds and find some, but I know there's quite a number of ferns over there by the library. So I'll just do that so we can see some ferns that are right on campus. Let's head back toward the building then. Well, I did notice I was making my way around the pavilion here toward the parking lot, and I did see on the edge of the woods there are some ferns. So we'll go ahead and get these. I will stop as well by the library up here on my way out. These ferns are Boston fern. Boston fern, division Pterophyta. Before I leave the main part of campus and head over toward the library to see some more ferns, I did want to point out one that's right here by the entrance to the UP building. Not where we started, which was over there between the UP and the TL buildings. Right here at the main entrance, there is a plant. And you can see some of the big ones coming up here, poking through. These guys are cardboard palms. Cardboard palm. Just like the sago palm, these guys are misnamed. They are not palms at all. They are cycads, division Cycadophyta. They're going to produce cone-like structures for reproduction. And right here, as long as we're looking at these cardboard palms, a cycad, right next to them you got a bunch of grass plants coming. And you see, grasses, they do have flowers. Even though a lot of times they're not noticeable, they will have flowers. These aren't the flowers, these are the seeds that came from the flowers. Here you can see on this one some of the tiny little flowers that are there. You have to keep in mind, just because it's a flowering plant doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have big, beautiful flowers. Sometimes the flowers are rather indistinct, and it relates back to, well, how is it getting pollen from one flower to another? If it's a plant like grass, it uses the wind. And so there's no point in making big pretty flowers if you're using the wind to spread your pollen. The wind does not care what your flowers look like. We know it's a flowering plant, division Magnoliophyta, and if we could look closely, I'm not even going to attempt to zoom in, these leaves are tiny. But if you zoomed in, you could tell the leaf veins are parallel, so we know it's a monocot. Alright, as promised, I made a stop at the other end of campus. You can see where I am. I'm in the area north of the library. That's the library there. That's 113th. Noisy traffic going by. Where we have a whole bunch of ferns here on campus is right back here in the woods. So if you come north of the library, just come down to the end of the parking lot. I'm way down here at the end. And head into the woods, you'll find a number of different species of fern here. Alright, I made my way into the woods here. There's the parking lot out there. If we turn around and look into the woods, you can tell it's rained a bit lately because we got standing water back here. There are a variety of different types of ferns out here in the woods, right here on campus. We have swamp fern, there's cinnamon fern, Hottentot fern, shield fern, a number of different species. Just to give you a feel for what's right here as you walk in, this type of fern right here, this is swamp fern. And how do I know it's a fern? Well, if I turn over a leaf, swamp fern's very identifiable in that it gets these linear sori underneath the leaves. So this is underside the leaf. You see it's got these lines of sporangia, spore-producing structures. Anytime we have a collection of sporangia, it's known as a sorus. Collectively then, sori, plural, is sori. That gives it away, this guy, as a swamp fern. So we have swamp fern here. There are also a number of other types of ferns right back here on campus. What division are ferns? Pterophyta. Division Pterophyta. We've seen a number of divisions of plants then, right here on campus. More than enough representatives. If you're doing that biological collection, you can get it done on campus if you want, but remember we're right around the corner from Extension in the Botanical Gardens, where they have a great diversity of plants there as well. I hope this review helped you. And now, if you want, you can go out and about on the Seminole campus and see the plant diversity that we have right here on campus. Good place to review, and keep in mind if you're doing that plant biological collection, you can get a good number right here on campus.